Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Saubhagya from Oxford Medical College. Today we know about the anatomy of the eyelids. This is the picture showing the eyes of the humans when we are seeing from outside how they look like. We have got two eyes which are not seeing each other on either side of the nose. The two eyes will contribute to the visual sense of the humans. The lids are developed from the surface ectoderm, a fold of ectoderm which covers the anterior surface of the optic vesicle and then fuses together in front of the eyeball, and later it separates to leave the conjunctival space, and in between the layers of the folds of the ectoderm there will be imagination of the some mesodermal tissue which forms the muscles of the lid, orbicularis oculi and the levator papilla superioris, and also contributes to the development of the dorsal plate. The lids are separated fully by 7th month of intrauterine life. The most important part of the eyelids are their functions. They serve as curtains to the eyeballs. As they are, as we know, they by blinking they close the eyelids, and then by opening they open the eyeball. When they do this, they act as curtains which will prevent from the noxious influences of the air, wind and other injuries as a protective curtain, and also it acts as shutters. So this is the function of the lids when by closing and opening as like a door. It's very important for the eye to be exposed for the function of the serving the visual acuity, visual sensor, and then the eyelids closure is important for giving the rest. Position of the eyelids, or the upper lid covers about 1/5 of the cornea, lower lid covers just at the limbus, comes up to the limbus, and they help in the spreading of the tear film. If each blink, the tear film is uniformly distributed on the eyeball. It is very much essential for the eye integrity, ocular surface integrity, because the tear film smearing, if it is not uniform, we will end up in ocular surface disorder due to dry eye. So that's why it's very important for the spreading of the tear film. So with each blink, so normally we blink about 18 to 20 times per minute, so which is very much within the limit of tear breakup time. That means tear breakup time is around 68 seconds is the normal the tear breakup time. Before breaking of the tear film, with each blink will spread the tear film uniformly. It also gives cosmetic appearance to the face and prevents the toxins from draining to the eye because of its position and a slanted position laterally downwards. It will allow all the toxins draining from the forehead to go to the temporal region, not to drain into the eye. Thereby we will not get the toxic influences into the eye. The gross anatomy of the eyelids can be studied under the following headings: extent of the eyelids and the eyelid folds, and the position of the eyelids, canthi, eyelashes, eyelid margins, and the palpebral aperture. The extent of the eyelids. The upper eyelid extends from the eyebrow downward to end in the free margin of the upper palpebral aperture, and it's in contact with the palpebral tissue. The lower eyelid extends from the palpebral aperture to the malar region, where it the continues with that of the maxillary tissues. And the position of the eyelids. The upper eyelid covers the 1/6 of the cornea, and then lower eyelid comes in contact with the limbus. Lid margins are 2 mm in width. This has got the two portions, the ciliary portion and the lacrimal portion. And at the junction of this we have the lacrimal papilla, over which there is the perforation, which we call it as punctum of the lacrimal duct. The ciliary portion, which extends from the lacrimal papilla to laterally, and the medial part, that's the lacrimal portion, ends in the medial canthus, and the lateral portion ends at the lateral canthus. And it has got a anterior rounded border and a posterior sharp border. The junction of these two at the posterior to the openings of the meibomian glands. This marks the junction of the mucocutaneous junction. This also marks the junction between the dry and the wet portion of the eyelids. The grey line of the skin and the conjunctiva is the line between the orbicularis oculi and the meibomian glands. This area is important to identify during the surgical procedures, because into this area we inject the local anesthetics or the other drugs into this area, so that the spreading of the injected material will be good into this area. The eyelashes are 2 to 3 rows, both in the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid. In the upper eyelid there are 100 to 150 number. In the lower eyelid about 70 to 18 number. The cilia are directed upward and outward directions, and in the upper lid, and downward and outward directions in the lower lid. They don't interlace together when we close the eyelids. They are about 20 to 120 microns. They end in the sharp end, and the lifespan of these eyelashes is about 5 months, and the regrowth of the new eyelashes will get completed in about 10 months to 1 year, and they remain darker throughout the year, except in some pathological conditions like alopecia areata, and in the cases of spinal iridostosis, and as a hereditary, the graying of the eyelashes. The cilia have no erector muscles, but they are set obliquely anterior to the palpebral muscle and reach up to the dorsal plate. The glands of the Zeiss and the Mole are the glands in the eyelids, which are drained into the infundibulum under the piliary gland. That's the glands of the hair follicle. So the eyelashes are lost in some clinical conditions when we call it as the balding of the eyelid margin or madarosis, and this can happen during the blepharitis and some the clinical conditions of the body like hypothyroidism, leprosy, etc. The palpebral aperture is an elliptical space between the upper and the lower lid margins. This is normally about the horizontally about 28 to 30 millimeter in adults, and vertical width is 9 to 11 millimeters in the straight gaze, and in the newborns it will be horizontal width about 18 to 20 millimeter and vertical height is about 8 to 9 millimeter. Structure of the lid. There are of 8 layers from outside in. There are the skin, layer of subcutaneous areolar tissue, the layer of muscular layer in which the orbicularis occupy the runs, and submuscular areolar layer, the layer in which all the nerves and the vessels of the eyelids are present, and fibrous layer is this contributes to the contour of the eyelids, the set of tarsal plate and the septae, and the layer of non-striated muscles and muscle fibers, conjunctiva. Diagram showing the layers of the eyelids. From outside in, you can see the dermis and the epidermis, the skin layer with the sweat glands and the hair follicles, and subcutaneous areolar layer, the striated muscle layer, and then the submuscular areolar layer. Then we have a tough tarsal plate, and posteriorly we have got a orbital septum and the layer of the levator palpebrae superioris coming from behind, and the mullus muscle, the smooth muscle layer of the eyelid and the conjunctiva. Skin is a highly elastic texture, and it's a fine texture and thinness in the body, less than 1 millimeter in thickness. This is almost transparent. The skin of the medial part of the eyelid differs from the lateral part. In the medial part, it has got some rudimentary sweat glands and hair follicles, and also the well-developed the sebaceous glands in the basal epidermis. The epidermis is 6 to 7 layers of the squamous unicellular, the squamous epithelial cells, and they have got unicellular sebaceous glands, sweat glands, and hair follicles. Dermis is the thinnest and a thin layer, and it has got variable number of melanocytes, and that's why the color of the skin is due to, and it has got vessels, nerves, lymphatics, and the blood vessels, fibroblastic fibers. The mucocutaneous junction is the junction between the openings of the behind the openings of the tarsal glands, that is the junction of the wettable and the non-wettable surfaces, representing the limit of the marginal strip of the shear fluid. Subcutaneous areolar tissue is the rudimentary space, it's a potential space, not easily visible, and it's readily distended by the blood or the edema, and it is got in continuation with that of the supraorbital subcutaneous space. That's why whenever there is edema or injury, any pathology or surgery in the forehead and anterior to the anterior cranial sutures, we find the edema in the lower lid. It's non-elastic. This space is non-existent near the medial and lateral canthus and at the ciliary margins. Subcutaneous areolar tissue is a potential space. Usually it's not present visibly, but it is readily distended by the blood and the edema. It is in continuity with that of the forehead and also anterior up on the cranium up to the anterior cranial suture. So whenever there is injury or surgery or inflammation in the forehead region or in the anterior cranial region, all the fluid will drain down and causes edema of the lid and ecchymosis of the lid. Thus, the space is non-existent at the medial and the lateral canthus and the ciliary margins. The palpebral aperture is an elliptical space between the upper and the lower lid margins. This is normally about horizontally about 28 to 30 millimeter in adults, and vertical width is 9 to 11 millimeters in the straight gaze. and in the new bones it will be horizontal with about 18 to 20 millimeter, and vertical height is about 8 to 9 millimeter. This is the diagram showing the striated muscle arrangements in the eyelids. This is the orbital portion which extends from the medial palpebral ligament upward in an ellipsoid fashion and arches over the palpebral portion and touches the superior orbital margin and comes to the lateral palpebral ligament. And this is the lower portion, the palpebral portion, which has got the preseptal portion and the pre-tarsal portion, and the all are in the ellipsoid shape only. The all will extend from the superior medial palpebral ligament to the lateral palpebral ligament, both inferiorly and superiorly. And up in the upper eyelid, this is the picture showing the arrangement of the orbicular sarcoline fibers, both the orbital portion and the palpebral portion, and it's the mingling of the orbicular sarcoline fibers with that of the occipitofrontalis. This action, the extension of the muscle is the cause for the lower upper eyebrow pulling down when we close the eyelids, and also in case of the weight of the increased weight of the upper eyelid, and the frowning of the eye, the occipitofrontalis when we look up. The orbicular supply gets its nerve supply through the seventh cranial nerve. That's the facial nerve. The upper lid muscle gets blood nerve supply from the temporal division of the seventh cranial nerve, and then the lower lid muscle gets nerve supply from the zygomatic branch of the seventh cranial nerve. Functions of the orbicularis oculi. Orbicularis oculi helps in closure of the eyelids in various mechanisms. So orbital portion takes up the work of the forced closure of the eyelids, as in cases of the winking, and the in the noxious influences comes in. The palpebral part helps in closure of the eyelids and the soft closure and blinking, and also soft voluntary closure. And the lacrimal portion, or also called as harness muscle, helps in pumping of the lacrimal sac, thereby pumping the lacrimal fluid collected in the sac under the nasolacrimal duct. The muscle of Ryelin is responsible for the forced closure of the lid margins, as in cases of blepharospasm. Subcutaneous areolar tissue is a potential space. Usually it's not present visible, but it is readily distended by the blood and the edema. It is in continuity with that of the forehead and also anterior up on the cranium up to the anterior cranial suture. So whenever there is injury or surgery or inflammations in the forehead region or in the anterior cranial region, all the fluid will drain down and causes edema of the lid and ecchymosis of the lid. Thus, the space is non-existent at the medial and the lateral campus and the ciliary margins. This is the picture showing the origin and insertion of the levator palpebrae superioris. We can see in this picture the origin of the the levator palpebrae superioris from the posterior part of the orbiter close to the superior chest and above the tendinous ring of Zinna, and passes anteriorly and gets inserted into that of the into the posterior dorsal plate border and the skin, and also to that of the superior fornix. This is the picture showing the insertion of the main part of the levator palpebrae superioris into the posterior border of the dorsal plate. The most important part of the eyelids are their functions. They serve as curtains to the eyeballs, as they are, as we know, they by blinking we. This is the picture showing the eyelid muscles and their relations as an overview. So we can see here the orbicular softline and the levator palpebrae superioris and their relation. The superior transverse ligament of retinol is a thickened band of orbital fascia extending from the trochlear pulli to the capsule of the orbital lobe of the lacrimal gland. This is formed condition of the superior sheath of the elevator muscle joined medially by the reflected fascia of the superior oblique muscle. This tendon helps in the acts as a strength booster to the levator palpebrae superioris and helps in keeping its tonic condition, tonic state. If the tendon is severed anytime due to trauma or due to surgery, will lead to poor functioning of the levator palpebrae superioris. This is the picture showing the Whitnall's ligament, which is a fibrous condensation from the superior oblique muscle and the levator palpebrae superioris and its relation with that of the levator palpebrae superioris. This is the diagram showing the striated muscle arrangements in the eyelids. This is the orbital portion which extends from the medial palpebral ligament upward in an ellipsoid fashion and arches over the palpebral portion and touches the superior orbital. Submuscular areolar layer is the layer of loose connective tissue between the orbicularis of oculi muscle and the fibrous layer. It has got nerves, vessels. It splits into anterior and posterior lamina superiorly, and it communicates with the subapontic layer of the scalp. In the upper lid, it is divided into two spaces. One is pretarsal and then preseptal. So pretarsal is between the orbicular trochlear levator palpebrae superioris and the dorsal plate, and preseptal is bounded posteriorly by the orbitum subtalar and the anteriorly by the orbicular trochlear and the levator palpebrae superioris. In the lower lid, submuscular layer is a single space behind the orbicular oculi. Fibrous layer of the eyelid is the main framework of the lids. It gives a framework and also the configuration to the eyelids. The central thick part is called as dorsal plate, peripheral thin part the lids are developed from the surface ectoderm, a fold of ectoderm which covers the anterior surface of the optic vesicle and then fuses together in front of the eyeball, and later it separates to leave the conjunctival space, and in between the layers of the folds of the ectoderm there will be imagination of the some mesodermal tissue. Capsulopalpebral fascia is a fibrous attachment which is attached to the inferior rectus as a delicate fibrous attachment, passes anteriorly and splits into two portions to embed the inferior oblique muscle, and further it unites to form the tough ligament of the Lockwood, and then anteriorly it fuses to form the fibrous ligament of the lid. Septum orbital is the thin floating membrane of connective tissue, takes part in all the movements of the eyelid. It's strong laterally in the upper lid than in the lower lid. Peripherally it attaches the periosteal septum of the facial bones, and it has got some weakness because of the perforations by the some structures which are passing through that, and that constitutes the weaker part through which the orbital fat can perforate. Medially it is in contact with the orbital fat between the trochlea and the medial palpebral ligament. In the lower lid it is in contact with the orbital fat, expansions of the inferior and superior rectus. The superior transverse ligament of Whitnall is a thickened band of orbital fascia extending from the trochlear pulli to the capsule of the orbital lobe of the lacrimal gland. This is formed condension of the superior sheath of the elevator muscle joined medially by the reflected fascia of the superior oblique muscle. This tendon helps in acts as a strength booster. This is the picture showing the structures passing through the orbital septum. The lids are developed from the surface ectoderm, a fold of ectoderm which covers the anterior surface of the optic vesicle and then fuses together in front of the eyeball, and later it separates to leave the conjunctival. This is the picture showing the medial palpebral ligament and the dense fibrinous tendon and its relation to that of the lacrimal sac in the medial wall of the orbit. This lateral palpebral ligament is a thin band of connective tissue laterally attached to Whitnall's tubercle and medially attached to superior and inferior dorsal plates. It has got the orbicular supply gets its nerve supply through the seventh cranial, that's the facial nerve. The upper lid muscle gets blood nerve supply from the non-striated or the smooth muscle of the eyelid is the Muller's muscle, which is deep to the septum orbital. This arises from the fibrinous attachment from the terminal of the striated muscle of the expansions of the in the upper lid, and that is from the undersurface of the levator palpebrae superioris, and in the lower lid from the condensation of the fibers of the inferior rectus. This is supplied by the sympathetic nerve fibers. Thereby, contraction of the sympathetic nerve fibers or stimulation leads to widening of the palpebral aperture, and then so sympathetic paralysis leads to narrowing of the palpebral aperture. This is called as Horner's syndrome. Conjunctiva is the posteriormost layer of the eyelid. It extends from the intermarginal strip or the grey line to the posterior pollicis, and it's firmly adherent to the overlying dorsal plate and the levator palpebrae superioris. This is the picture showing the medial palpebral ligament and the dense fibrinous tendon and its relation with that of the lacrimal sac in the medial wall of the orbit. This is the picture showing the various glands location in the lids and their relation anatomically. When blood supply to the eyelids are derived mainly from the median and lateral palpebral arteries, the marginal arterial arcades, and median, lateral, superior and inferior palpebral arcades. The blood supply is mainly from the transverse artery, superior temporal artery and infraorbital artery. This is the picture showing the various blood supply to the eyelids and their arcade formations and distributions. The pretarsal venous plexus superficial to tarsus drains to the angular veins, from there to that of the internal jugular vein, and then the superficial temporal part of the lids drains to the external jugular vein, and posterior dorsal plexus such as that posterior to the dorsal plate drains to the superior and inferior ophthalmic veins. Lymphatics of the eyelids drains from the medial part into the submandibular lymph nodes, and the lateral part to that of the preauricular lymph nodes. This is the picture showing the various glands location in the lids and their relation anatomically. When the superior transverse ligament of Whitnall is a thickened band of orbital fascia extending from the trochlear pili to the capsule of the orbital lobe of the lacrimal gland. This is formed condition of the superior sheath of the elevator muscle joined medially by the reflected fascia of the superior oblique muscle. This tendon helps in acts as a strength booster to the levator palpebrae superioris and helps in keeping its abdomen